Hey everyone! Thanks so much for all the support and for sticking with my channel through these personal stories. Your comments and likes mean the world to me. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next parts of this one. I really appreciate it, and it helps me keep sharing these raw experiences. Alright, let's get into it. I never thought I'd be the one telling a story like this, but here I am, sitting in my quiet living room late at night, the kind of silence that presses in after the kids have gone to bed, and my husband is snoring softly down the hall. We've been married for 12 years now, high school sweethearts who met in a biology class where we were paired for a project on ecosystems. Back then, everything felt so straightforward. Love was this simple equation of time spent together plus shared dreams equaling forever. He was the steady type, always planning ahead, working his job in logistics to make sure the bills were paid on time, while I juggled part-time work at a local office and raising our two boys, now 8 and 10. Life had settled into this rhythm. School drop-offs in the morning, quick dinners from whatever was in the fridge, weekends filled with soccer practices and yard work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours, built on those small everyday assurances that we were in it together. Lately though, something had shifted. It started subtly, like how the air changes before a storm you didn't see coming. My husband, let's call him Mark for this, though that's not his real name, had been pulling away, not in big dramatic ways, but in the little ones that add up. He'd come home from work and head straight to the garage to tinker with some project, or scroll through his phone during dinner, answering my questions with one-word responses. I tried talking to him about it, but he'd brush it off. Just tired, babe. Work's been hectic. I believed him at first because, well, that's what you do in a marriage. You trust the narrative you've built. But the distance grew, and I found myself feeling more like a roommate than a wife. The intimacy faded. Our nights together became perfunctory, if they happened at all. I'd lie there afterward, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily, wondering if this was just the natural ebb of long-term relationships, or if something deeper was wrong. That's when I reconnected with an old colleague from my office days. His name, again, not real, is Alex. We'd worked together briefly a few years back on a team project, nothing more than professional chats over coffee breaks. But one day, I ran into him at the grocery store, both of us reaching for the same carton of milk in the dairy aisle. We laughed about it, exchanged the usual, "How've you been" pleasantries, and before I knew it, we were catching up over a quick cup of coffee at the in-store cafe. He was divorced now, sharing custody of his daughter, and working in sales for a different company. There was no spark at first, just the comfort of talking to someone who listened, really listened, without the weight of shared history pulling the conversation down. As weeks passed, those chance meetings turned into intentional ones. A text here and there, "Hey, saw this article on that topic we discussed, thought you'd like it." Then lunches during my freelance hours when the kids were at school. It felt innocent, like filling a void I hadn't fully acknowledged. Alex made me laugh in ways I hadn't in years, remembering details about my life that Mark seemed to forget. He'd ask about my boys' latest antics or how my writing hobby was going. I'd started journaling again, something I'd set aside after motherhood took over. With him, I felt seen, not just as a mom or a wife but as me, the person I'd been before all the roles piled on. But guilt crept in slowly. I'd come home from those lunches with a flush on my cheeks, telling Mark I was out running errands. The lies were small at first, omissions really, but they built a wall inside me. One evening, after a particularly long day, Mark surprised me by cooking dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta with sauce from a jar and a salad. He even lit a candle on the table, trying to make it special. We talked more that night than we had in months, about his stresses at work and my frustrations with the endless cycle of household chores. For a moment, it felt like old times, and I promised myself I'd stop seeing Alex, that this was just a phase. Yet the next day, when Alex texted inviting me to a park for a walk, I went. We sat on a bench under some trees, watching people jog by, and he opened up about his own marriage falling apart, how the little resentments had snowballed into irreparable damage. I shared bits about my life too, careful not to badmouth Mark, but admitting the loneliness. That's when it happened. He leaned in and I didn't pull away. The kiss was tentative, charged with all the unspoken what-ifs. My heart raced, a mix of thrill and terror. When I got home, I avoided Mark's eyes, busying myself with laundry, But inside, everything had shifted. That night, as I lay in bed, Mark rolled over and wrapped his arm around me, mumbling something affectionate in his sleep. I froze, the weight of what I'd done pressing down like a stone. But the twist came the next morning when I checked my phone. There was a message from Alex, but not what I expected. It read, "I think we need to talk. There's something I haven't told you." My stomach dropped. What could it be? Had I just opened a door to something far more complicated than I imagined? The message from Alex lingered on my screen like an accusation, and I stared at it over my morning coffee, the steam rising in lazy curls while the boys argued over cereal bowls in the kitchen. Mark was already out the door for work, kissing my forehead on his way, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I typed back a quick "sure" when, trying to sound casual, but my fingers trembled. We agreed to meet that afternoon at a quiet cafe on the edge of town, the kind with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls. As I drove there in our family minivan, loaded with forgotten snack wrappers and a stray soccer cleat in the back, I replayed the kiss in my mind. It had felt electric, a reminder of passion I'd thought was reserved for younger versions of myself. But now, doubt gnawed at me. What if this was all a mistake, a midlife crisis dressed up as connection? When I arrived, Alex was already there, nursing a black coffee, his face more serious than I'd seen before. We exchanged awkward hellos and I sat down, my hands fidgeting with the menu. "So, about yesterday?" he started, his voice low. "The kiss. It was amazing, but I need to be honest. I'm not as over my ex as I let on. We're still sorting through some custody stuff and she's been texting me a lot lately. I didn't want to lead you on without you knowing." My heart sank, but not in the way I expected. Instead of jealousy, I felt a strange relief, mixed with confusion. Here I was, risking my marriage for someone who was still tangled in his own past. We talked for over an hour, him explaining the messy details of co-parenting and lingering emotions, me nodding along, while internally questioning my choices. As we parted, he hugged me tightly, whispering, "I really like you, but let's take it slow." Driving home, I felt unmoored, like I'd stepped into a script I hadn't written. That evening, Mark noticed my distraction during dinner. "Spaghetti again, because it's easy and the kids love it." "Everything okay?" he asked, reaching across the table. I forced a smile, blaming it on a headache. But inside, the guilt was morphing into something sharper. Resentment toward myself for complicating things unnecessarily. The days blurred into a routine laced with tension. I'd text Alex sporadically, keeping things light, but each exchange pulled me further from the life I'd built. One weekend, Mark suggested a family outing to a nearby lake, packing sandwiches and fishing poles into the trunk. The boys were ecstatic, splashing in the shallow water while we sat on a blanket, sharing a thermos of lemonade. For a few hours it was perfect, Mark's hand in mine, the sun warming our skin, laughter echoing off the water. But my phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from Alex. "Missed our talk today?" I ignored it, focusing on the moment, but the seed of division was planted. Then came the unexpected, a promotion at Mark's job. He came home beaming one evening, a bottle of cheap sparkling wine in hand. "We did it, honey. More money, better hours. Means more time with you and the kids." We celebrated with takeout pizza, the boys cheering as he described the new role. That night, in bed, he was attentive, affectionate, like the early days of our marriage. I responded, but my mind wandered to Alex, comparing, contrasting. The guilt intensified, but so did the thrill of the secret. A week later, I met Alex again, this time at his apartment for what was supposed to be a quick coffee. Things escalated quickly, clothes shed in a haze of desire, the kind that blinds you to consequences. Afterward, lying there tangled in sheets that smelled faintly of his cologne, I felt alive but hollow. As I dressed to leave, he mentioned casually, "By the way, my ex is coming over later to discuss our daughter. We're trying to work things out for her sake." The words hit like a slap. Work things out? Was this reconciliation? He assured me it was just parental stuff, but doubt flooded in. Rushing home, I barely made it before Mark and the kids. That night, as I cooked stir-fry with vegetables from the market, Mark wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Love you," he murmured. I turned, kissing him. but tears pricked my eyes. The twist unfolded the next day when I found an old photo album in the attic while cleaning. Flipping through, I saw pictures of us young, happy, and a note from Mark tucked inside. To my forever love, through thick and thin. It shattered me. But then, checking my phone, another message from Alex. I think I'm falling for you, but there's more. My ex wants to try again. My world tilted. Was I just a rebound? The suspense built as I realized the affair was unraveling faster than it began, pulling me toward a decision I wasn't ready for. The revelation from Alex hung over me like a dark cloud, and I spent the next few days in a fog, going through the motions of daily life, while my mind raced. Mornings started with packing lunches, peanut butter sandwiches for the boys, cut into triangles because that's how they liked them, and dropping them off at school, waving cheerfully as they ran inside. Mark was in high spirits with his new job, leaving earlier but coming home with stories of team meetings and future plans. We could finally take that trip we've talked about, he said one evening over grilled chicken and rice, his eyes lighting up. I nodded, forcing enthusiasm, but inside, I was torn between the stability of our life and the chaotic pull of what I'd started with Alex. I confronted Alex via text first, too scared for a call. What do you mean she wants to try again? Where does that leave us? His response came hours later. It's complicated. I care about you, but for my daughter's sake I have to consider it. Complicated. That word echoed in my head as I folded laundry, pairing socks that never seemed to match anymore. The affair, which had started as an escape, now felt like a trap. I stopped responding to his messages, needing space, but the silence only amplified my anxiety. Meanwhile, at home, small cracks began to show. Mark noticed my withdrawn mood, attributing it to stress. Why don't you take a day for yourself? Go shopping or something, he suggested kindly. I did, wandering through a mall, browsing clothes I didn't need, but my thoughts kept circling back. In a quiet moment at a food court, sipping a smoothie, I journaled furiously on my phone, pouring out the confusion. The rush of being desired by Alex versus the deep-rooted comfort with Mark. It was raw, messy, like untangling a knotted necklace. As weeks passed, I threw myself into family activities to distract. We baked cookies one rainy afternoon, the kitchen filled with the scent of chocolate chips and flour dust everywhere. The boys' giggles as they licked the bowl brought genuine smiles, reminding me of what was at stake. But nights were harder. I'd lie awake, replaying every misstep, wondering how I'd let loneliness lead me here. Then, an unexpected olive branch from Alex, a long email apologizing, explaining his ex-push for reconciliation was more about stability than love, and he wanted to end things properly before pursuing anything with me. It stirred hope, but also wariness. We met once more, in a public park this time, sitting on opposite ends of a picnic table. He looked tired, bags under his eyes, and admitted, I rushed into this with you because you made me feel hopeful again. But I need to sort my life first. I shared my own turmoil, the guilt eating at me. We parted amicably, agreeing to pause, but as I drove away, tears blurred the road. Back home, Mark surprised me with a date night, dinner at a casual spot with burgers and fries, then a walk under streetlights. We talked deeply, about dreams we'd shelved, fears of growing apart. I know I've been distant, he confessed. The job pressure got to me, but I'm committed to us. His vulnerability touched me, and for the first time in months, I felt a spark reignite. That night, our connection was tender, real, without the shadow of secret. But life doesn't pause for resolutions. The boys' school called about our youngest struggling with reading, pulling me into parent-teacher meetings and extra tutoring sessions. Amid the chaos, Alex faded to the background, his texts unanswered. I focused on rebuilding, suggesting couples activities like evening walks where we'd hold hands and debrief the day. Yet emotional depth comes from layers, and mine were peeling back. In therapy, I'd started seeing a counselor online, framing it as stress management. I unpacked the why. Years of putting everyone else first had left me empty, seeking validation externally. It was painful, admitting my flaws, but necessary. Mark noticed the change, complimenting my renewed energy. One evening, as I cleared the dinner table, leftover tacos, wrappers crinkling, I found a note from Mark. Thank you for being my rock. It warmed me, but also highlighted the irony. The story wasn't over. Internal conflicts lingered, like how to forgive myself. As I reflected in my journal that night, I realized healing wasn't linear, but the effort mattered. Little did I know, a bigger revelation was brewing, one that would test everything anew. Months slipped by in that peculiar way time does when you're trying to mend what's broken inside. The affair with Alex became a distant memory, like a book I'd read and shelved, its lessons lingering, but the plot fading. I threw myself into self-improvement, morning runs along neighborhood paths, breathing in the crisp air, and evening meditations to quiet the mental noise. Mark and I communicated more. Small habits like daily check-ins over coffee before the kids woke. "How are you really feeling?" became our mantra, peeling away layers of unspoken resentments. The boys thrived in this shifted dynamic. Our oldest joined a baseball team, practices filling weekends with the crack of bats and cheers from the sidelines. I'd pack coolers with water bottles and fruit, sitting on bleachers with other parents, chatting about the mundane joys and trials of family life. It grounded me, these everyday anchors reminding me that relationships aren't grand gestures but accumulated moments. But scars don't vanish overnight. Guilt surfaced in waves, especially during quiet times, like folding towels fresh from the dryer, their warmth contrasting my cold regrets. I'd wonder about Alex, if he'd reconciled with his ex, but resisted the urge to chat. Instead, I channeled energy into hobbies, restarting my writing, penning short essays about motherhood's hidden sides, submitting to online forums anonymously. The feedback was validating, a quiet affirmation separate from my roles. One afternoon, while volunteering at the school library, shelving books amid the scent of paper and glue, a conversation with another mom struck deep. She shared her own story of straying in her marriage, the aftermath of confession and rebuilding. "It's not about the mistake," she said softly, "but what you do after." Her words echoed as I drove home, rain pattering on the windshield, wipers swishing rhythmically. That evening, over a simple meal of baked fish and vegetables, I broached more openness with Mark. "I've been thinking about us, how we can keep growing." He listened, suggesting we read a book on relationships together. We did, discussing chapters in bed, lights dim, voices soft. It fostered intimacy, not just physical but emotional, bridging gaps I'd widened. Yet, life threw curveballs. Mark's promotion brought travel, short trips to regional offices, leaving me solo with the kid. The first time, I managed fine. Homework help, bedtime stories about adventures in far-off land. But loneliness crept back, subtle as a draft under the door. I'd text Mark goodnight, then scroll through old photos, reminiscing. During one such trip, a storm knocked out power, leaving the house dark, and the boys scared. We huddled with flashlights, telling ghost stories that turned silly, laughter chasing away fears. It strengthened my resolve. This was my family, worth protecting. Alex reappeared unexpectedly via a LinkedIn message, professional, congratulating me on a post I'd shared about work-life balance. I responded politely, keeping it brief. But it stirred old emotions, a reminder of vulnerability. I confided in my therapist, exploring why I'd cheated, not just loneliness, but unaddressed insecurities from childhood, always feeling secondary. As spring bloomed, we planned a family picnic in a meadow, blankets spread, sandwiches unpacked. The boys ran free, chasing butterflies, while Mark and I talked futures, maybe saving for a bigger house, or travel when the kids were older. It felt hopeful, real. But depth comes from honesty, and I wrestled with whether to confess. Pros, clearing the air. Cons, potential devastation. In the end, I chose silence, focusing on present actions. Mark's trust was a gift I wouldn't squander again. One night, after tucking the boys in, Mark pulled me close. "I'm grateful for you," he said. I echoed it, meaning every word. The journey had taught me resilience, the nuance of human flaws. Relationships aren't perfect, they're forged in forgiveness, self included. As I drifted to sleep, peace settled, but life's unpredictability loomed, ready for the next chapter. Years have a way of smoothing edges, turning sharp regrets into softened lessons. Looking back now from the vantage of a few more anniversaries, I see how that turbulent period reshaped us. Mark and I celebrated our 15th year with a quiet dinner at home, steak on the grill, salad from the garden we'd planted together. The boys, now teens, rolled their eyes at our sentimentality, but joined in, sharing toasts that mixed humor with affection. Life had evolved. Mark's career stabilized, allowing more family time, while I pursued freelance writing full-time, articles on personal growth, finding an audience online. The affair's shadow faded, but its impact lingered in positive ways. I became more attuned to emotional needs, initiating conversations before distances grew. We attended a weekend retreat for couples, not therapy exactly, but workshops on communication amid nature trails and group discussions. It was eye-opening hearing others' stories, struggles with infidelity, drift, renewal, normalizing our own imperfections. Daily life hummed with routine. School events like the boys' science fair, where one built a volcano model that erupted spectacularly, lava bubbling over. I'd capture moments on my phone not for social media, but to remind myself of joy's simplicity. Evenings often involved board games around the table, laughter over misplaced pieces, bonding us tighter. Alex? I heard through mutual connections he'd remarried his ex, focusing on family. It brought closure, no bitterness, just acknowledgement of paths diverged. My journal entries shifted from confession to gratitude, detailing small wins. A hug from Mark after a long day, the boys' unsolicited, "I love you." Challenges arose, as they do. Our youngest faced bullying at school, drawing us closer as we navigated meetings with teachers, teaching him resilience. Mark supported me through a writing rejection, his encouragement a balm. These trials deepened our bond, proving love's endurance. Reflecting now, in the quiet of our backyard swing, stars overhead, I marvel at growth. The infidelity wasn't a villain's act but a human falter, born from unmet needs. Forgiveness, self and mutual, was key. Mark never knew, and I carry that weight lightly now, using it to fuel better choices. Our story isn't dramatic, it's ordinary, laced with psychological truths. Loneliness can mislead, but intentionality rebuilds. As the boys head to college soon, empty nest looms, but we're excited. Planning trips, rediscovering us. In the end, relationships thrive on nuance, not perfection. Mine taught me that, raw and real, emerging stronger from the depths. Years have a way of smoothing edges, turning sharp regrets into softened lessons. Looking back now, from the vantage of a few more anniversaries, I see how that turbulent period reshaped us. Mark and I celebrated our 15th year with a quiet dinner at home, steak on the grill, salad from the garden we'd planted together the previous spring, tending it through weeding sessions that doubled as therapy. The boys, now teens with their own worlds of friends and hobbies, rolled their eyes at our sentimentality, but joined in, sharing toasts that mixed humor with affection, clinking glasses of sparkling water since they were still underage. Life had evolved. Mark's career stabilized, allowing more family time like weekend hikes, where we'd pack backpacks with trail mix and water, discussing everything from politics to dreams. Meanwhile, I pursued freelance writing full-time, articles on personal growth, finding an audience online, with readers emailing thanks for the honesty that mirrored their lives. The affair's shadow faded, but its impact lingered in positive ways, like how a healed fracture strengthens bone. I became more attuned to emotional needs, initiating conversations before distances grew. Simple things like leaving notes in lunch bags, or sending midday texts just to say, "Thinking of you." We attended a weekend retreat for couples, not formal therapy but workshops on communication amid nature trails dotted with wildflowers and group discussions around campfires. It was eye-opening hearing others' stories, struggles with infidelity from both sides, the slow drift of routine, the hard work of renewal, normalizing our own imperfections and making us feel less alone in the human mess. Daily life hummed with routine that felt comforting rather than confining. School events, like the boys' science fair where our youngest built a volcano model that erupted spectacularly, lava bubbling over onto the display table amid cheers from classmates. I'd capture moments on my phone not for social media glory, but to remind myself of joy's simplicity, scrolling through them on tough days. Evenings often involve board games around the kitchen table, laughter over misplaced pieces, or strategic blunders, bonding us tighter as a unit amid the chaos of adolescence. Alex? I heard through mutual connections at a work conference I'd attended, he'd remarried his ex, focusing on co-parenting and building a stable home for their daughter. It brought closure. No bitterness or what-ifs left lingering. Just quiet acknowledgement of paths that diverged for the best. My journal entries shifted from anguished confession to daily gratitude, detailing small wins. A spontaneous hug from Mark after a long day at his desk. The boys' unsolicited, "I love you," as they headed out the door. Or the way sunlight filtered through curtains on lazy Sundays. Of course, challenges arose, as they inevitably do in any real life. Our youngest faced bullying at school, a cruel phase where kids targeted his quiet nature, drawing us closer as a family while we navigated meetings with teachers and counselors, teaching him resilience through open talks and role-playing scenarios at home. Mark supported me through a string of writing rejections, his encouragement a steady balm, bringing home my favorite tea and listening without judgment as I did frustrations. These trials, far from breaking us, deepened our bond, proving that love's true endurance comes from weathering storms together, emerging with scars that tell stories of survival. Psychologically, I've delved deeper into understanding my actions through books on attachment theory and self-compassion, realizing the infidelity stemmed from unaddressed voids, childhood patterns of seeking approval, amplified by motherhood's demands. It's not an excuse, but context that fosters growth. Mark and I have cultivated rituals, weekly date nights, even if just a walk around the block hand in hand, debriefing the week's highs and lows with honesty. As the boys edge toward college, the empty nest looms like an approaching horizon, but we're excited rather than fearful. Planning trips to explore national parks, rediscovering the couple we were before kids, while cherishing family vacations in the meantime. One recent outing to a coastal area involved beach walks at dawn, collecting shells and talking about futures, theirs in potential careers, ours in perhaps downsizing or volunteering. In the end, relationships thrive on nuance, not the perfection peddled in movies. Mine taught me that, raw and real, emerging stronger from the emotional depths through plausible steps of reflection and effort. Sitting now on our porch swing, a gentle breeze rustling leaves, Mark beside me with a shared blanket, I feel content. Life's unpredictable events, joys, setbacks, continue, but we've built tools to navigate them. This confessional, if anything, is a testament to that. Mistakes happen, but redemption lies in the choices that follow.